Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started.
Evolution has been writing the story of life for billions of years, leaving astonishing traces in every living thing, including you. Some are so obvious that we see them every day. Others remain hidden in our genes, our bones, and in creatures that seem to defy all logic. Tonight, you will discover the most fascinating secrets of that extraordinary journey, a collection of remarkable facts that can forever change the way you see the world and your own origins. During the first few weeks of human development, a small tail extends from the base of the embryo's spine, serving as a clear evolutionary echo of our ancestors. This tail is made up of vertebrae and even contains muscles and nerves. It begins to form around the 28th day of development and reaches its maximum length about 1 week later. Then, in most cases, the body reabsorbs it, and it becomes the tailbone. Occasionally, babies are born with small intact tails, offering a rare but fascinating glimpse into our evolutionary past. It is a quiet reminder that we once shared the same body structure as creatures that use their tails for balance, climbing, or swimming. Our body contains around 20,000 human genes, but the bacteria living inside and on you carry millions more. These microbes are not just passengers. They help digest food, shape the immune system, and even influence mood and behavior. Most of them live in the gut, forming what scientists call the microbiome, an ecosystem that evolved alongside humans over millions of years. Some of these bacteria are passed down from generation to generation, inherited just as certainly as DNA. Others are acquired from food, soil, and other people. You are not just a single organism, but a living, thinking community, part human, part microbial, and completely shaped by evolutionary history. In the dark, silent waters of underground caves, some species of fish have lost their eyes completely. Even so, their embryos still begin developing them. Tiny eye structures form just as they do in their sighted relatives, but then growth stops, the cells begin to break down, and the tissue is reabsorbed into the body. This phenomenon, known as regressive evolution, reveals how evolution eliminates what is no longer useful. It is often more efficient to switch something off than to redesign it from scratch. Even in blindness, these cavefish carry the silent blueprint for sight, an echo of the light that once guided their ancestors. Whales still retain faint traces of the legs they left behind. Deep within the soft tissue near their hips lie tiny pelvic bones that are no longer connected to limbs but are still present. Long ago, these structures supported the walking legs of their land-dwelling ancestors. Over millions of years, as their descendants adapted to life in the water, the bones became smaller and lost their original function. Yet evolution rarely removes a structure completely. Instead, it repurposes it, modifies it, or simply leaves it in place. The vestigial pelvis in whales is a silent anatomical fossil, the remnant of a body that once walked and now glides silently through the sea. Although a giraffe's neck is astonishingly long, it is built from the same number of vertebrae found in nearly all mammals, exactly 7. Each vertebra has simply stretched and expanded over time, creating the famous towering neck that allows giraffes to browse in the tops of trees and battle one another by swinging their necks during ritual combat. This limitation, the 7-bone blueprint, shows how evolution tends to modify existing structures rather than invent entirely new ones from scratch. A longer neck was not created by adding new bones, but by lengthening the ones that were already there. Even the most dramatic changes often come from small modifications to familiar patterns. Echolocation, the ability to see with sound, evolved independently in both dolphins and bats, two animals separated by millions of years and completely different environments. Dolphins use sonar to navigate through murky ocean waters, while bats use high-pitched calls to hunt insects in the dark. Despite these differences, both lineages developed similar genetic changes in their hearing systems and sound-producing mechanisms. This is a remarkable example of convergent evolution, which occurs when similar challenges lead unrelated species down the same evolutionary path. Sound became a way to pierce the darkness, with two solutions evolving independently in complete isolation. The skies are filled with creatures that have wings, but they did not all acquire them in the same way. Birds, bats, and insects each evolved flight independently. Even pterosaurs, the extinct flying reptiles, had a wing structure different from that of modern birds. In every case, evolution took whatever was available, whether an arm, a membrane, or a set of scales, and transformed it into something capable of lifting an animal into the air. These multiple inventions of flight are a reminder that evolution is not a straight line. It is a process of improvisation, trial and error, and opportunity. Sometimes it reaches the skies in 4 completely different ways. It may be hard to believe, but humans and bananas share around 60% of their DNA. That is because much of the genetic code of all life on Earth is built from the same ancient ingredients. Genes responsible for basic cellular processes, such as copying DNA, breaking down sugars, or producing proteins, are so fundamental that they have been passed down for billions of years. The differences lie in how those genes are organized, expressed, and adapted. You are obviously not a banana, but at the molecular level, both of you run variations of the same deeply ancient code. In certain species of lizards, females have developed the ability to reproduce entirely without males. This process, known as parthenogenesis, allows a single female to produce offspring that are genetic clones of herself. It is rare among vertebrates, but in some desert-dwelling lizards, it has become the norm. Although this method can limit genetic diversity, it also has advantages, since a lone individual can establish a new population without needing a mate. It is an impressive example of how evolution can shape reproduction in ways that break the usual rules, especially in harsh or isolated environments where opportunities to mate are scarce. Every plant, every animal, every fungus, and every microbe that has ever lived on this planet, from whales to willows and the bacteria in your gut, is part of the same unbroken tree of life. If you traced its branches far enough back through time, beyond mass extinctions and drifting continents, you would arrive at a single ancient cell. It lived more than 3.5 billion years ago in a world without oxygen. Long before the first fish or fern, its genetic material survives in every living creature today. You are connected not only to your parents and grandparents, but also to fungi, coral reefs, and even pond slime. They are all cousins in one vast and ancient family. Long before swimming through the oceans, the ancestors of modern whales walked on land. They had hooves, long snouts, and limbs built for wading through shallow rivers. Over tens of millions of years, their descendants gradually became more aquatic. Their legs grew shorter, their tails broadened, and their nostrils shifted to the top of their heads. Fossils such as Pakicetus and Ambulocetus beautifully capture this transition, showing animals with legs for walking on land and ear bones adapted for hearing underwater. Today's whales still carry the hidden legacy of that transformation, with tiny vestigial pelvic bones buried deep within their bodies. What began as a 4-legged forager became the largest animal the world has ever known. The next time you see a sparrow or a crow, try imagining it as a small, feathered dinosaur, because that is exactly what it is. Modern birds evolved from a branch of small, fast, feathered theropods, the same group that includes Velociraptor and Tyrannosaurus rex. These ancient creatures already had hollow bones, keen eyesight, and feathers used for warmth or display. Over time, their forelimbs became wings and their skeletons grew lighter, but evolution never erased their ancestry. Birds still lay eggs, retain claws, beaks, and even traces of dinosaur genes in their DNA. Every robin, every owl, and every pigeon you encounter is a dinosaur that learned how to fly. Throughout the bodies of animals, including our own, there are features that no longer serve their original purpose. These are known as vestigial structures, evolutionary remnants that were once useful but now persist in altered or reduced forms. Goosebumps in humans are one example. In the past, they helped our furry ancestors raise their hair to stay warm or appear larger to predators. Today, they serve very little purpose. The human appendix is also considered the remnant of a plant-digesting organ used by distant herbivorous ancestors. Evolution rarely erases things cleanly. Instead, it modifies, repurposes, and occasionally forgets, leaving behind silent anatomical clues to our past. When bacteria are exposed to antibiotics, most of them die, but sometimes a few survive thanks to random genetic mutations. These survivors multiply rapidly and pass their resistance on to future generations. In just weeks or months, an entire population can become immune to a drug that once killed it. This is evolution happening not over millions of years, but within a single hospital or farm. It is a living example of natural selection in action, where traits that increase survival spread throughout an entire population. Antibiotic resistance is a global health crisis, but it is also a real-time demonstration of just how relentless and adaptable evolution can be. In humans, a key gene that once built powerful jaw muscles, called MYH16, carries a mutation that disables it. Our ancient primate relatives had massive chewing muscles and smaller skulls. In early humans, the loss of this gene may have reduced the mechanical pressure on the skull, allowing the brain cavity to expand. Whether the mutation caused larger brains or simply made them possible, it reveals the subtle and unexpected trade-offs of evolution. Sometimes a gene breaks, and something extraordinary grows in the space it leaves behind. Your teeth carry traces of your aquatic ancestors. Hidden within the human genome are inactive versions of genes that once produced enamel throughout the entire body, not only on teeth but also on the skin. In ancient fish, a hard enamel-like coating helped protect their entire exterior. Over evolutionary time, those genes were lost or repurposed as animals moved onto land and developed internal skeletons. Today, enamel appears only on teeth, while the rest of the body remains soft. Even so, the ghost of that armor is still encoded in your DNA as an evolutionary whisper from long before limbs ever touched solid ground. Discovered in 2004, Tiktaalik is a fossil that is 375 million years old and bridges the gap between fish and four-legged land animals. It had gills and fins, but it also had lungs and wrist-like bones, structures capable of supporting its body in shallow water or muddy environments. With its flat head and flexible neck, it looked like a cross between a fish and a salamander. Tiktaalik is not our direct ancestor, but it is part of the transitional puzzle that explains how life moved from water onto land. Evolution does not make leaps. Instead, it builds one small change at a time until fins become legs and rivers give way to forests. The extinct Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine, looked remarkably like a dog, with pointed ears, a striped back, and everything else you would expect. Yet it was not even a placental mammal, but a marsupial more closely related to kangaroos than to wolves. On the isolated continent of Australia, it evolved a skull shape, gait, and hunting behavior almost identical to those of true wolves through a process known as convergent evolution. Even though they were separated by more than 100 million years of evolution, the demands of being a carnivorous predator shaped both animals into nearly the same form. Evolution often repeats itself, not exactly, but closely enough to be astonishing. Penguins did not forget how to fly. They traded it for something different. Over millions of years, their wings became shorter and stiffer, transforming into perfect flippers for diving. Their bones became heavier and lost the hollow structure found in flying birds. Their feathers became tightly packed into dense, waterproof layers. These changes gave them extraordinary agility underwater, where they fly through the sea with the grace of torpedoes. This transformation came at a cost, because they could no longer take to the skies. Even so, evolution does not seek perfection, only what is good enough. In the icy waters of the Southern Ocean, penguins are every bit as well adapted as any eagle soaring through the air. Modern horses stand on a single toe. Their powerful hooves are enlarged middle toes that evolved for speed and endurance across open plains. If you go back more than 50 million years, early horses such as Eohippus had 4 toes on their front feet and 3 on their back feet. These small, forest-dwelling animals walked across dense vegetation on soft, multi-toed feet. As grasslands spread and predators became faster, natural selection favored longer limbs and simpler, more efficient feet. The side toes gradually shrank and disappeared. What remains today is a streamlined limb descended from a foot that was once broad, an elegant compromise between ancestry and environment. Some tiger moths have evolved the ability to confuse their greatest predator, the bat. Using specialized organs called tymbals, these moths produce rapid ultrasonic clicks while flying. To human ears, there is silence, but to a hunting bat that relies on echolocation, it becomes interference, a cloud of sound that can blur the outline of the moth's body or suggest a false location. This acoustic defense is a rare example of biological countermeasures, similar to sonar jamming in military technology. It is an evolutionary arms race fought in the darkness, where every improvement in a bat's sonar is matched by an improvement in the moth's stealth. In most of the animal kingdom, females carry the embryos, but that is not the case with seahorses. In their world, the roles are reversed. The female deposits her eggs into a pouch on the male's abdomen, where he fertilizes and protects them as they develop. The pouch provides oxygen, nutrients, and even contractions during birth. This reversal of parental roles is rare among vertebrates, but in seahorses it is the norm. Evolution does not follow social conventions. It responds to what works. In the tangled seagrass meadows where they live, this arrangement gives mothers more time to produce eggs while fathers care for the next generation. Naked mole rats live underground in dark, crowded tunnels with high levels of carbon dioxide. Over time, they evolve to adapt to this environment in ways that almost no other mammal can. One of their most unusual traits is that they do not feel certain kinds of pain. Their nerve receptors do not respond to acid or capsaicin, the chemical that makes chili peppers taste hot. This insensitivity most likely evolved as a side effect of adapting to their suffocating, acidic tunnels. In their strange world, pain signals would be constant and useless, so evolution switched them off. It is one of the many oddities that make these wrinkled rodents exceptional examples of evolution. Unlike humans, who have a single set of adult teeth that emerge from below, elephants have a conveyor belt-like system. Their massive molars grow deep within their jaws and slowly move forward as older teeth wear down. Throughout their lives, they go through 6 sets of these grinding plates. Each new molar grows larger and tougher than the one before it, making it capable of chewing bark, roots, and tough vegetation. Eventually, even the final pair wears out, and in the wild, this can determine an elephant's lifespan. It is a quiet example of how evolution shapes not only bodies, but also the passage of time within them. Human skin color is one of the most visible examples of evolution in action, and it did not happen only once. Populations living in environments with high levels of ultraviolet radiation evolved darker skin to protect against DNA damage and preserve folate, while populations in regions with lower ultraviolet radiation evolved lighter skin to absorb more sunlight for vitamin D production. This happened independently in different parts of the world. For example, dark-skinned populations in Africa and southern India are genetically distinct, and the light skin of Europeans and East Asians evolved through different genetic mutations. Human skin tone is not a simple linear gradient, but a mosaic of local evolutionary solutions to sunlight. North American pronghorn can reach speeds of more than 55 miles per hour, far faster than any of its living predators. The reason lies in the past. During the Ice Age, pronghorns shared the plains with the now extinct American cheetahs, incredibly fast hunters that pushed their prey to evolve greater speed. When those predators disappeared, the pronghorn kept its remarkable running ability. Today, it is a species adapted for a race that no longer exists. Evolution leaves traces not only of what still exists, but also of what has disappeared, like a kind of ecological ghostwriting preserved in bones, tendons, and breathtaking bursts of speed. In the human body, one of the nerves that controls the voice, the recurrent laryngeal nerve, takes an unusually long route. Instead of traveling directly from the brain to the larynx, it descends into the chest, loops around the aorta, and then travels back upward. This detour is an evolutionary remnant. In fish, the nerve followed a short path around a nearby artery. As the neck and chest lengthened in our tetrapod ancestors, the nerve stretched along with them but never changed its route. Even in giraffes, the same nerve takes this absurd detour, stretching for more than 15 feet. Evolution does not rebuild from scratch. It reshapes what is already there. Cacti in the Americas and euphorbias in Africa look remarkably similar, both with thick, ribbed stems, spines, and water-storing tissues. Yet they are not closely related at all. Their similarity is the result of convergent evolution, meaning different lineages arriving at the same adaptations in response to the same environmental pressures. Both plants needed to conserve water, discourage herbivores, and survive under intense sunlight. Evolution shaped them into the same solution using completely different starting materials. If you did not know the difference, you might think they were twins, but their resemblance is only skin deep. Humans see the world in a rich spectrum of colors thanks to 3 types of cone cells in the eye, but we are not the only ones. Birds, butterflies, mantis shrimp, and some reptiles see even more colors, many of them extending into the ultraviolet range. What is fascinating is that color vision evolved independently in different groups of animals. Insects and vertebrates do not use the same genes or the same retinal pigments. They simply arrived at similar solutions. In some primates, color vision evolved again after their ancestors had lost it. Evolution does not preserve traits unless they serve a purpose, but it is willing to reinvent them when the conditions are right. Modern crocodilians look almost identical to their ancient ancestors from more than 200 million years ago, earning them the nickname of living fossils. However, even though their outward appearance has changed very little, their internal biology has continued to evolve. Crocodiles have incredibly efficient circulatory systems, capable of holding their breath for more than 1 hour, and their hearts are uniquely adapted for diving. Their behaviors, including maternal care and vocal communication, are surprisingly advanced. Evolution does not always mean visible change. Sometimes stability itself is the adaptation, a sign that an ancient design still works in the modern world. Marsupials, such as kangaroos, koalas, and wombats, evolved separately from placental mammals. Yet both groups ended up with strikingly similar body forms. There are marsupial versions of moles, anteaters, mice, and even wolves. These mirror image forms are another example of convergent evolution. On different continents and in isolated evolutionary settings, similar ecological pressures produced similar forms. It is not that one group copied the other. Instead, the environment shaped them in the same way. Evolution does not care where a solution comes from, only that it works. Woodpecker strikes wood with a force of up to 1,000 times the force of gravity, yet its brain suffers no damage. That is because it has evolved a series of adaptations that absorb the impact. These include a thickened skull, a flexible beak tip, a spongy bone structure, and even a specialized hyoid bone that wraps around the skull like a safety harness. Its eyes also close milliseconds before impact to protect the retinas. None of this happened overnight. It took countless small steps over millions of years, with each one preserving the birds that could peck a little harder and still survive. Flatfish, such as soles, begin life looking like ordinary fish, with one eye on each side of the head. However, as they develop, one eye slowly migrates to join the other, and the fish begins swimming on its side along the seafloor. The adult body becomes completely asymmetrical. This remarkable transformation is the result of a unique evolutionary path that allowed flatfish to camouflage themselves perfectly against the ocean floor. Fossils reveal transitional forms with eyes halfway through the migration, capturing the process in the middle of its transformation. Evolution does not need to create perfect symmetry. It only needs to make survival work. Koalas have fingerprints so detailed and so similar to those of humans that even under a microscope, it can be difficult to tell them apart. The intricate loops and whorls evolved independently, not from a common ancestor with primates, but as a result of convergent evolution. Fingerprints provide traction for gripping, especially on smooth bark, and may also improve tactile sensitivity. This means that koalas, while quietly climbing eucalyptus trees, independently arrived at the same friction-enhancing feature that humans use to make tools. Nature often returns to its best ideas, even in unexpected places. While most butterflies dazzle with vivid colors, some have evolved wings that are almost invisible. Species such as the glasswing butterfly of Central America have scales that are widely spaced or completely absent, allowing light to pass through them. The effect is astonishing, as the wings become panels of living glass. This adaptation provides camouflage, making it harder for predators to spot them in flight. Transparency is rare among land animals, but in the filtered light of a tropical rainforest, it is a powerful form of invisibility. Evolution did not create these wings from scratch. It simply reduced the parts that reflected light, allowing the world to shine through them. Naked mole rats are full of evolutionary surprises, but one of their strangest adaptations is their ability to survive without oxygen. In low-oxygen environments, they switch their metabolism to use fructose instead of glucose, a trick normally seen only in plants. This change helps keep their brains and hearts functioning even when oxygen levels drop almost to zero. Most mammals would die within minutes under those conditions, but naked mole rats, shaped by millions of years in narrow, poorly ventilated tunnels, evolved an alternative solution. They are among the only known mammals that can survive true anoxia by relying on a strategy borrowed from the plant kingdom. Over thousands of years of domestication, dogs developed the rare ability to interpret subtle human signals, including facial expressions, tone of voice, and even the direction we point. Studies show that dogs outperform chimpanzees at interpreting human social gestures, even though chimpanzees are our closest living relatives. This ability most likely evolved through their close relationship with humans. The earliest dogs that were better at anticipating human intentions may have been better fed, more protected, or trusted more often. Over time, evolution favored emotional attunement. Your dog is not just loyal, it is biologically wired to understand you. Unlike most animals, octopuses have the remarkable ability to edit their own RNA, the molecule that helps turn genetic instructions into proteins. This means they can adjust which proteins are produced in real time, allowing flexible responses to their environment. It is not a permanent change to their DNA, but a temporary change in how that DNA is expressed. This mechanism is rare and may come at a cost, because octopuses appear to sacrifice genetic mutation rates in exchange for greater short-term adaptability. In a constantly changing, information-rich world like the ocean, evolution gave them a flexible mind and a body to match. Many birds have 4 types of color receptors in their eyes compared with our 3, allowing them to see ultraviolet light and color combinations that are beyond human perception. What looks to us like an ordinary brown sparrow may actually be a dazzling display of ultraviolet patterns to another bird. This expanded vision plays a role in mate selection, navigation, and finding food. Feathers that appear dull to us may glow brilliantly under the right light. Evolution has fine-tuned their eyes to see a richer world, one that we cannot even fully describe. The bright green sea slug, Elysia chlorotica, has evolved the ability to steal chloroplasts, the parts of algae that capture sunlight, and keep them functioning inside its own cells. This allows the slug to perform photosynthesis, using sunlight to produce energy just like a plant. The slug also appears to have incorporated some algal genes into its own DNA, possibly through horizontal gene transfer. It is an astonishing case of evolutionary theft, where one kingdom borrows tools from another. For a brief time, this animal lives like a solar-powered hybrid, blurring the line between plant and animal. Vast majority of birds locate food using their eyesight, but kiwis, the small, flightless birds native to New Zealand, have taken a different evolutionary path. Their nostrils are located at the very tip of their long bills, allowing them to smell insects, worms, and roots buried in the soil. Their sense of smell is among the most highly developed of any bird, an unusual trait that evolved alongside their nocturnal, ground-foraging lifestyle. While most birds rely on vision, kiwis use smell, making them an avian exception shaped by isolation and the quiet demands of the forest floor. Marsupial moles, native to Australia, and placental moles, found in other parts of the world, look remarkably alike. Both are small, blind, and covered in dense fur. Both build complex tunnel systems and have shovel-like front limbs, yet genetically they are worlds apart. One is a marsupial, while the other is a placental mammal. Their similarities are the result of convergent evolution, not shared ancestry. Faced with the same underground lifestyle, evolution shaped both animals into nearly identical forms using completely different starting materials. They are evolutionary echoes, 2 unrelated creatures shaped into the same solution. Certain species of orchids have evolved to mimic the appearance and scent of female insects, luring unsuspecting males into attempting to mate with the flower. During these unsuccessful mating attempts, pollen sticks to the insect and is carried to the next flower. This form of deception is so precise that it often involves mimicking specific insect species down to their exact shape, color, and even their pheromones. It is not just camouflage, it is seduction. In the game of survival, evolution sometimes favors illusion over honesty, and these orchids have become masters of manipulation in the plant world. Spiders produce a variety of silks, each with different properties, such as being sticky, stretchy, strong, or fine. These silks come from separate glands, each of which evolved to serve a unique purpose, such as trapping prey, wrapping eggs, building webs, or creating draglines for escape. The evolution of silk was not a single event, but a series of innovations over hundreds of millions of years. Some silk is stronger than steel for its weight, while other types rival Kevlar in elasticity. It is one of the most versatile biomaterials in nature, shaped not by a single invention, but by the evolutionary layering of specialized functions. In several groups of fish, electricity evolved independently, from rays to electric eels and knifefish. These electric organs began as modified muscle cells that no longer contract but instead generate small electrical charges. By stacking these cells and coordinating their output, the fish can produce voltage. In weakly electric fish, the electric field is used for navigation and communication, while in more powerful species, such as the electric eel, it becomes a weapon. The same biological tool, muscle, was transformed again and again into something shocking. Evolution did not invent electricity. It simply borrowed muscle and re-engineered it. At first glance, a bat may seem like a close relative of a mouse because it is small, furry, and nocturnal. Genetically, however, bats are more closely related to whales and humans than they are to rodents. They all belong to a major group of placental mammals known as Lorasiatheria. This surprising relationship highlights the limits of visual similarity. Evolution shapes animals to fit their environments, not to reflect their ancestry. Wings and whiskers can be deceiving. It is only when we examine genomes rather than appearances that we see the true shape of the evolutionary tree. While most frogs begin life as aquatic tadpoles, some species have evolved to skip that stage entirely. These frogs lay their eggs on land or in trees, and the embryos develop directly into fully formed miniature frogs. In some cases, the young are carried on their parents' backs. This evolutionary change eliminates the risky aquatic stage, protecting the young from predators and environmental fluctuations. It is a reminder that evolution does not just shape bodies, it redesigns life cycles. Even something as ancient as metamorphosis can be rewritten when the environment demands a better path. The axolotl, a salamander native to Mexico, never undergoes a complete metamorphosis. Instead of transforming into a land-dwelling adult, it retains its juvenile aquatic form all the way to sexual maturity, a condition known as neoteny. It keeps its gills, flattened tail, and external fins while remaining fully capable of reproducing. This evolutionary strategy may have allowed the axolotl to thrive in a stable aquatic environment, avoiding the energy costs and risks of transformation. In a world where most amphibians are tied to metamorphosis, the axolotl took a different path, one that led to eternal youth. Self-recognition in a mirror is rare in the animal kingdom and is often considered a sign of advanced cognition. Surprisingly, pigeons, often dismissed as simple birds, can pass this test when properly trained. They can recognize a colored mark on their own bodies that is visible only in the reflection, and they will attempt to remove it, demonstrating that they understand the image is of themselves. This suggests a level of self-awareness that evolved independently of primates, dolphins, and elephants. Evolution does not always place complexity where we expect it. Sometimes it hides it beneath the feathers of a city bird. The ii, a nocturnal lemur from Madagascar, has evolved an unusually long, thin middle finger that it uses to tap on wood, listen for hollow spaces, and extract larvae, a hunting technique known as percussive foraging. This behavior is remarkably similar to the way humans use tools. The ii's finger is supported by a ball-and-socket joint, giving it an exceptionally wide range of motion. Its ears are highly specialized for detecting the sounds of moving insects. This evolutionary niche, part bat, part woodpecker and part primate, shows how specialized anatomy and behavior can converge into a single elegant solution. Gibbons are the only primates that use brachiation, swinging from branch to branch arm over arm, as their primary form of movement. To do this efficiently, they evolved unique wrist joints with a ball-and-socket structure, much like that of a shoulder. This allows the wrist to rotate freely, reducing strain and increasing speed. Combined with long fingers, powerful shoulders, and a lightweight body, gibbons can swing across gaps of more than 30 feet. It is an acrobatic marvel that evolved not for display, but for survival in the forest canopy. Evolution did not invent new parts. It refined what was already there for graceful flight through the trees. Sloths have one of the slowest digestive systems in the animal kingdom. Their leaf-based diet is low in nutrients, and their metabolism is extraordinarily slow. It can take a sloth more than 2 weeks to completely digest a single meal. To support this, they have multi-chambered stomachs filled with specialized microbes that break down tough plant fibers. Their slow movements, low body temperature, and minimal calorie requirements are all part of the same evolutionary strategy. Do less, use less energy, and avoid predators by becoming almost invisible. In the tropical rainforest canopy, patience is not just a virtue. It is a survival strategy. Barnacles are well known for attaching themselves to rocks and ship hulls, but some have taken their parasitic lifestyle even further. Certain species have evolved to embed themselves in the thick skin of whales, anchoring into living tissue. There they feed by filtering plankton while their massive hosts swim through the ocean. This close relationship is so specialized that some barnacle species are found only on specific kinds of whales. It is a testament to how evolution can shape entire life cycles around a living, moving environment, turning a migrating mammal into a floating reef. Vampire bats, which feed on the blood of mammals and birds, have evolved an extraordinary adaptation. Specialized heat sensors in their noses that allow them to detect the warm flow of blood beneath the skin. These sensors are extremely sensitive and can locate veins with pinpoint accuracy in complete darkness. The underlying mechanism is similar to that found in certain snakes, but it evolved independently. The bat's razor-sharp teeth and saliva with anticoagulant properties are only part of the story. The true innovation is the ability to perceive blood through heat. In this case, evolution turned touch into thermal vision. Most mammals, including humans, have 2 sex chromosomes, X and Y. The platypus, however, is once again an evolutionary exception, possessing 10 of them, 5 X chromosomes and 5 Y chromosomes in males. These form a chain during reproduction, passing on combinations that scientists are still working to understand. Interestingly, some of these chromosomes share characteristics with those of birds, suggesting a link to a more ancient genetic system. This complex arrangement is one of the many peculiarities that make the platypus a living mosaic of evolutionary history, part mammal, part reptile, and part mystery. In Jurassic fossil deposits, scientists have found fern fronds that are virtually identical to those growing today. These plants, sometimes called living fossils, have survived mass extinctions, climate shifts, and the rise and fall of entire ecosystems with almost no structural change. Their secret lies in their resilience. Ferns reproduce through spores, can thrive in a wide variety of habitats, and tolerate poor soils. From an evolutionary perspective, they discovered a winning formula early on and never needed to change very much. In forests around the world, those ancient green fronds still unfurl exactly as they did beneath the feet of the dinosaurs. Jellyfish belong to one of the oldest animal lineages on Earth, and their defining feature, the stinging cell, is unlike anything else in biology. These cells, called cnidocytes, contain tiny harpoons that fire on contact, injecting venom with lightning-fast speed. They evolved independently from any other type of biological weapon in the animal kingdom. Even more fascinating, jellyfish have no brain and no central nervous system. Their bodies are simple, yet their stinging mechanism is incredibly sophisticated. Evolution did not shape them to think, but to survive. A drifting system of reflexes and tentacles that has floated through the oceans for 500 million years. In the vast, ever-changing world of ocean life, lifelong pair bonds are rare, but seahorses are an exception. Many species form monogamous partnerships, greeting one another with daily rituals and even intertwining their tails as they swim. This behavior is closely tied to their unique reproductive system, in which the males carry the developing embryos inside a brood pouch. Evolution appears to have favored stable partnerships in these slow-swimming creatures, making it more reliable for mates to find one another and reproduce. In a sea filled with competition, the seahorse followed a different path, one of partnership, shared investment, and a remarkable form of loyalty. The tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia, certain species of Camponotus ants have evolved a dramatic last-resort defense, self-destruction. When threatened, they contract their abdominal muscles so forcefully that their bodies rupture, releasing sticky, toxic chemicals that immobilize their attackers. This suicidal defense protects the colony at the cost of the individual, making it a clear example of how natural selection can favor self-sacrifice in social animals. It is not courage in the human sense. It is biology redesigned for cooperation. In this case, evolution shaped the body into a weapon, not for hunting, but for defending others. Lungfish can survive for years without water. These ancient air-breathing fish evolved the ability to endure extreme drought. When their freshwater habitats dry up, they burrow into the mud and secrete a cocoon of mucus, entering a state of suspended animation known as estivation. Their metabolism slows dramatically, allowing them to survive in this state for months and even years until the rains return. This adaptation evolved over millions of years in regions with unpredictable wet and dry seasons. It is a living portrait of evolutionary flexibility, blurring the boundary between fish and amphibian, between movement and stillness, between life and waiting. Parrots evolved vocal learning in a way remarkably similar to humans. They are among the few non-human animals capable of true vocal learning, meaning they can imitate complex sounds and develop dialects. Unlike instinctive calls, learned vocalizations require imitation, memory, and social context. This ability evolved independently from human language, using completely different neural circuits, yet the result is strikingly similar, a flexible and dynamic form of communication. Some wild parrots have been observed using regional accents, while captive birds can imitate household sounds with astonishing accuracy. Evolution gave parrots something remarkably close to culture, passed on not through genes, but through voice. The anglerfish uses bacteria to produce light. In the dim depths of the ocean, the female anglerfish carries a glowing lure just above her mouth to attract prey. However, the light does not come from her own body. It is produced by symbiotic bacteria living inside a specialized organ. These microbes evolved to live nowhere else, while the anglerfish evolved to feed and protect them. In return, the bacteria glow through a chemical process known as bioluminescence. It is a relationship shaped by deep time and total darkness, with evolution creating partnerships between organisms to produce light where none exists. Giraffes have blood pressure that is about twice as high as ours. To pump blood all the way up to their upright heads, giraffes evolved a cardiovascular system unlike that of any other animal. Their hearts are massive and powerful, capable of generating blood pressure roughly double that of a human. Their arteries are thick and muscular, and they have specialized valves that prevent blood from flowing backward when they lower or raise their heads. Without these adaptations, the simple act of drinking water could cause serious brain damage. Evolution sculpted their bodies to meet this biological challenge, not only in the neck bones we can see, but also in the invisible rhythms of their hearts. Camels have oval-shaped red blood cells. Camels are famous for their humps, but one of their most extraordinary adaptations is hidden within their bloodstream. Unlike the round red blood cells found in most mammals, camels have oval-shaped ones. This allows their blood to keep flowing smoothly, even when they are severely dehydrated, because the cells are more flexible and less likely to clump together. They can lose up to 25% of their body water, a level that would be fatal for most animals, and still recover quickly once they drink again. Evolution shaped their blood not only for survival, but also for endurance in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Tree shrews tolerate alcohol better than humans. In the forests of Southeast Asia, wild tree shrews regularly consume the fermented nectar of the Bertam palm, a drink with alcohol levels similar to those of beer. Even so, they show no signs of intoxication. Genetic studies reveal that tree shrews evolved highly efficient alcohol processing enzymes, allowing them to metabolize ethanol without the behavioral effects experienced by most mammals. This trait is thought to have helped them take advantage of a food source that other animals avoided. Once again, evolution found a way to turn risk into opportunity, shaping a species that can drink without stumbling. Tuatara has a third eye beneath its skin. This reptile, native to New Zealand, is the only surviving member of a lineage that split from other reptiles more than 200 million years ago. Among its many ancestral features is a third eye, a light-sensitive organ buried beneath the skin on the top of its head. Although it does not form images, this parietal eye detects changes in light and may help regulate circadian rhythms and seasonal behavior. It is more visible in young individuals and gradually fades as the tuatara matures. Evolution did not erase this primitive feature. It simply hid it beneath the surface, where it still silently watches the sky. Wombats produce cube-shaped droppings. Australian wombats are the only known animals that produce cubic feces. This unusual adaptation allows the droppings to stack easily without rolling away, a useful trait for marking territory across the rocky landscapes where they live. The cube shape is not created by a square-shaped anus, but by varying elasticity in different sections of the intestine. As the droppings dry and become compressed, muscular contractions shape them into distinct edges. It is an example of how even the most ordinary traits can be molded by evolutionary pressures and how geometry can emerge from intestinal biology. Some spiders evolved to mimic ants. In the insect world, ants are feared and respected because of their strength and organization. Some spiders evolved to take advantage of that reputation by imitating ants almost perfectly. They narrow their waists, wave their front legs as though they were antennae, and adopt the slow, jerky movements typical of ants. This disguise helps them avoid predators or slip into ant colonies without being detected. It is not only visual mimicry, but behavioral mimicry as well. Evolution shaped both their bodies and their habits to imitate another species almost completely. It is a quiet form of camouflage built not through invisibility, but through imitation. The peacock's tail is a product of sexual selection. The peacock's magnificent tail is a puzzle. It is enormous, colorful, and makes flying more difficult. Why would evolution favor such a burden? The answer lies in sexual selection, a process in which traits that improve reproductive success are favored, even if they reduce the chances of survival. Peahens prefer males with the largest and most symmetrical tails. Over time, that preference drove the evolution of this extravagant display. The tail is a signal, a costly but honest demonstration of health and genetic fitness. It may seem impractical, but in evolution's marketplace of attraction, beauty can be worth the price. Modern chickens have beaks, but buried within their DNA are inactive instructions for growing teeth, inherited from their toothed ancestors. In rare laboratory experiments, scientists have successfully activated these ancient genes and induced the growth of rudimentary tooth-like structures in chicken embryos. The genes are still there, silent but intact, like archived blueprints. Evolution does not erase old instructions unless it has to. Instead, it layers new adaptations on top of the old ones, sometimes leaving forgotten tools buried within the genome, ready to be rediscovered under the right conditions. Slime molds evolved a form of collective intelligence. Slime molds are single-celled organisms that can merge into vast multicellular networks. Despite having no brain or nerves, they solve complex problems such as finding the shortest path through a maze or optimizing nutrient routes between multiple food sources. They accomplish this by communicating through chemical signals, continuously adjusting their shape and movement in real time. What we call intelligence has evolved in many different forms, and slime molds represent one of the simplest yet most effective examples. Their decision-making emerges not from neurons, but from the physics of self-organization. It turns out that evolution does not always need a mind to make a good decision. Some shrimp can snap their claws so quickly that they produce light. The pistol shrimp has evolved a specialized claw that snaps shut with such force that it creates a bubble. When that bubble collapses, it produces sound, heat, and even a tiny flash of light. This phenomenon, known as cavitation, can stun or instantly kill its prey. The temperatures inside the collapsing bubble briefly reach thousands of degrees. Even though this happens within an incredibly small space, the shrimp itself remains unharmed, protected by its hard exoskeleton and an evolutionary design that transforms muscular force into explosive power. It is a reminder that evolution can turn simple body parts, such as a claw, into high-speed tools of astonishing precision. Giant pandas have a false thumb made from a wrist bone. Giant pandas spend most of their lives eating bamboo. To grip it efficiently, they evolved a remarkable feature, a sixth digit formed not from a finger bone, but from an enlarged wrist bone. This bone, called the radial sesamoid, functions like a thumb, allowing them to grasp and strip bamboo stalks with surprising dexterity. It is not a true finger, only a remodeled part of the wrist, but from an evolutionary standpoint, it works perfectly. Natural selection does not require elegance or anatomical purity. It only requires that a structure helps an animal survive and thrive. Tardigrades may have borrowed genes from other species. Tardigrades, also known as water bears, are microscopic creatures famous for their extraordinary ability to survive radiation, freezing, boiling temperatures, and the vacuum of space. One possible explanation for this resilience lies within their genome. Several studies suggest they may have acquired part of their DNA through horizontal gene transfer, meaning genes entered their genome from bacteria or other organisms. This process is rare in animals but common among microbes. If confirmed, it would suggest that evolution can sometimes cross species boundaries at the genetic level, blurring the line between inheritance and acquisition. Birdsong is learned, not instinctive. In many songbirds, the beautiful and complex songs we hear are not programmed at birth. Instead, young birds must listen, imitate, and practice, often learning from their parents or nearby adults during a critical period. If they are raised in isolation, they never learn the full version of the song. This ability, known as vocal learning, is rare in the animal kingdom and shares remarkable parallels with the development of human language. Evolution designed the avian brain to be plastic, flexible, adaptable, and highly responsive to sound. What begins as a simple chirp becomes music, passed down not through genes, but through culture. Some jellyfish can reverse their aging. The jellyfish Turritopsis dohrnii has evolved a remarkable ability. When it is injured or under stress, it can revert its cells to an earlier stage of development, effectively restarting its life. This process, known as transdifferentiation, allows adult cells to transform into different cell types, reversing biological time. The jellyfish returns to its polyp stage, anchoring itself to a surface and eventually growing into a new adult. This cycle can be repeated indefinitely, earning it the nickname of the immortal jellyfish. It is not true immortality, because these jellyfish can still die, but evolution gave them a shortcut through aging that no vertebrate has ever matched. Humans have a vestigial muscle for moving their ears. Behind each ear is a tiny band of muscle that, in most people, does absolutely nothing. In some individuals, however, it still contracts slightly in response to sound. It is a remnant of earlier mammalian ancestors that could swivel their ears like radar dishes to track predators or prey. In animals, such as cats and deer, these muscles are still fully functional. In us, they remain only as inactive wiring, a faint anatomical reminder of a more alert and animal-like past. Evolution does not always eliminate old functions. Sometimes it simply lets them quietly fade away. Female spotted hyenas evolved pseudopenises. In spotted hyenas, females have developed reproductive anatomy that closely resembles that of males, a feature known as a pseudopenis. This structure is used for urination, mating, and even giving birth. The reason is most likely hormonal. Female hyenas are exposed to unusually high levels of androgens during development, increasing their aggression and social dominance. In their matriarchal society, females are larger, stronger, and rank higher than males. The pseudopenis is not merely an oddity. It is part of a complex evolutionary trade-off that shapes social behavior, reproductive costs, and physical form in remarkable ways. Cave beetles have lost their wings or their eyes. In the perpetual darkness of caves, many beetle species have evolved in reverse, shedding traits that are no longer useful. Their wings become reduced or disappear entirely, and their eyes shrink or are lost altogether. Over generations, the energy once devoted to vision and flight is redirected to other senses, such as touch and smell. This process is known as regressive evolution and is common in isolated, resource-limited environments. It does not make the animal less evolved, but more specialized for its surroundings. In caves, blindness is not a flaw. It is an advantage. Some salamanders can regenerate entire limbs. While humans can heal cuts and broken bones, some salamanders can do far more, regenerating complete limbs that include bones, muscles, nerves, and skin. If a predator tears off one of their legs, it grows back over the course of weeks or months, often becoming fully functional. This ability comes from specialized cells that return to a stem cell-like state, allowing them to rebuild complex structures. Evolution preserved this trait in certain amphibians but lost it in most vertebrates. Scientists are studying salamanders to understand whether the secrets of regeneration might one day be unlocked in humans. For them, it is simply biology, ancient, elegant, and routine. Coelacanth was believed to have gone extinct 65 million years ago. For most of the 20th century, the coelacanth was known only from fossils and was considered a lobe-finned fish that had disappeared alongside the dinosaurs. Then, in 1938, a living specimen was caught off the coast of South Africa. It was an evolutionary Lazarus, a species that had changed very little over hundreds of millions of years while surviving in the cold, deep waters of the ocean, where relatively little life exists. Its fins resemble primitive limbs, offering clues about how fish may have first walked onto land. The discovery of a living coelacanth did not rewrite evolution. It confirmed it, showing how ancient lineages can endure far longer than we imagine. Pufferfish evolved beak-like teeth for crushing shells. The pufferfish is best known for its ability to inflate, but its most important evolutionary tool is its teeth. Fused into a strong beak-like structure, these teeth allow it to crack the hard shells of snails, clams, and crustaceans. Over time, its jaws adapted not just for biting, but for crushing, turning the fish into a living nutcracker. This fused dental structure is so effective that the pufferfish can even bite through coral. The beak is not made of new bones, but from the remodeling and fusion of existing teeth, a subtle evolutionary adjustment that transformed a simple mouth into a precision tool. Termites and cows share a digestive strategy. Despite their differences, termites and ruminants such as cows have evolved a similar method for digesting the tough cellulose found in plants, a symbiotic relationship with microbes. Both groups host vast communities of bacteria and protozoa inside specialized digestive chambers that break cellulose down into usable energy. In termites, this happens in the hindgut. In cows, it begins inside their multi-chambered stomach. This process allows both animals to thrive on foods that most creatures cannot digest. It is an evolutionary alliance in which two species, the host and the microbe, evolve together, transforming grass and wood into nourishment through an ancient partnership. Male anglerfish become permanent parasites. In some species of deep-sea anglerfish, the males are tiny compared to the females, and evolution has taken their relationship to an extreme. When a male finds a mate, he bites onto her body with his teeth. Over time, their tissues fuse together. His organs dissolve, except for his testes, which remain to provide sperm. He becomes a living appendage, permanently attached and nourished through the female's bloodstream. This bizarre form of reproductive fusion evolved in an environment where finding a mate is extremely rare. By eliminating separation, evolution solved the problem of distance, creating a union that is as grotesque as it is efficient. Corals evolved their own sunscreen through fluorescence. In shallow tropical reefs, some corals glow with brilliant fluorescent colors, including reds, greens, and blues. This glow is not merely decorative. It acts as a kind of sunscreen that protects both the coral and its symbiotic algae from intense ultraviolet radiation. Fluorescence redirects harmful light into safer wavelengths, allowing photosynthesis to continue without damage. These pigments evolved independently in different coral species, adapting to specific depths and lighting conditions. At the molecular level, evolution created a living shield, transforming sunlight into color and color into survival. Whales and hippos are close relatives. Even though one roams the land and the other rules the sea, hippos and whales share a remarkable evolutionary connection. Genetic and fossil evidence places them both within a group called the even-toed ungulates. Their most recent common ancestor lived about 55 million years ago and probably resembled a pig-sized, semi-aquatic animal with hooves and an affinity for water. Over time, one lineage returned completely to the ocean and became the whales, while the other remained in wetlands and gave rise to modern hippos. It is a reminder that evolutionary relationships are often hidden beneath the surface, shaped not by appearance, but by shared history. Transitional fossils connect all the major groups. One of the most persistent myths about evolution is that it lacks transitional fossils. The truth is exactly the opposite. From fish with primitive limbs to ancient birds with teeth and claws, paleontologists have uncovered an extraordinary record of forms that blur the boundaries between the major groups. Fossils such as Tiktaalik, Archaeopteryx, and Australopithecus capture moments of transformation. They are not missing links, but well-documented branches on the tree of life. Evolution does not move through giant leaps. It advances through small, steady steps, and beneath our feet, those steps have been preserved in stone and bone. Evolution sometimes moves forward in sudden bursts. Although evolution is often described as a gradual process, the fossil record shows that species sometimes remain relatively unchanged for long periods, followed by brief intervals of rapid transformation. This pattern is known as punctuated equilibrium. It suggests that most evolutionary change takes place in isolated populations over geologically short periods of time, often triggered by environmental changes, migrations, or new ecological niches. These bursts leave clear traces in the fossil record, with new species appearing suddenly rather than emerging gradually from one form into another. Evolution does not always flow like a river. Sometimes it leaps like a spark. Some fish evolved antifreeze more than once. In the freezing waters of the Arctic and Antarctica, several species of fish have evolved special proteins that prevent their blood from freezing. These antifreeze proteins bind to ice crystals and stop them from growing. Remarkably, Arctic cod and Antarctic notothenoid fish evolved these proteins independently, using completely different genetic starting points. This is a striking example of convergent evolution, two independent solutions to the same deadly problem. When the water drops below freezing, survival depends not on strength or speed, but on biochemistry. And in these fish, evolution answered the cold with molecular ingenuity. Snakes still retain the blueprint for legs. Although modern snakes have no limbs, their genomes still preserve remnants of the genes responsible for leg development. In pythons and boas, tiny vestigial hind limb bones, known as pelvic spurs, can still be found near the tail. They are not functional legs, but evolutionary ghosts. Snake embryos even begin to form limb buds before the process comes to a halt. Genetic studies have shown that the loss of legs was not caused by a single mutation, but by a gradual accumulation of changes that switched off the limb-building program. The blueprints are still there, archived and unused. Your DNA contains remnants of ancient viruses. Over millions of years, retroviruses inserted their genetic material into the DNA of our ancestors, and part of it remains there today. About 8% of the human genome consists of viral sequences that have been passed down from generation to generation like genetic fossils. Most are no longer active, but a few can still influence how our genes are expressed. These fragments, known as endogenous retroviruses, are a record of ancient infections that shaped our evolutionary past. Evolution is not just about adaptation and survival. It is also about the traces of ancient battles written into the very code of life. Fins of fish became the hands of four-limbed animals. The bones in your hand, including the radius, ulna, wrist, and fingers, evolved from the fin structures of ancient lobe-finned fish. Fossils such as Tiktaalik clearly illustrate this transition, showing jointed fins capable of supporting weight and allowing movement through shallow water. Over time, these bones were remodeled into limbs capable of walking on land. Genetic studies confirm that the same developmental genes regulate both fish fins and human hands. Evolution did not start from scratch. It modified an existing structure. Every time you move your fingers, you are using tools shaped by a lineage that once swam through ancient seas. Feathers evolved before flight. Feathers did not originate for flying. The earliest feathered dinosaurs most likely used them for insulation, camouflage, or display long before any creature ever took to the air. Fossils show that primitive feathers first appeared in small theropod dinosaurs, some of which had elaborate plumage but no clear adaptations for flight. Only later were feathers refined for gliding and powered flight in birds. Evolution often repurposes existing features for entirely new functions, a process known as co-option. What began as insulation became lift. What once decorated the body became wings. The human sense of smell is ancient and remarkably well developed. Although it is often considered weaker than that of many other animals, the human sense of smell remains surprisingly sensitive. We can detect more than 1 trillion different odors thanks to a vast family of olfactory receptor genes, many of which have been inherited and modified over millions of years. These genes originated early in vertebrate evolution, when smell played a central role in survival, navigation, and communication. In humans, many of them have become inactive, but those that remain are still highly effective. Evolution did not eliminate our ability to smell. It simply fine-tuned it for a different world, one in which vision took the leading role. Some insects evolved to mimic leaves so perfectly that they even display bite marks. Leaf insects have developed an extraordinary form of camouflage. They not only resemble leaves in shape and color, but some species even display markings that imitate holes chewed by other insects. Their legs look like stems, their bodies gently sway like foliage in the breeze, and their coloration can match the exact shade of the surrounding plants. This remarkable level of detail evolved through countless generations of natural selection, where those that most closely resembled inedible leaves were more likely to survive. It is such a complete illusion that even predators struggle to distinguish living creatures from plant matter. In this case, evolution became an artist. Humans are still evolving. Evolution did not stop with the invention of agriculture, language, or cities. It continues today in subtle ways. Genes related to lactose tolerance, survival at high altitudes, disease resistance, and even aspects of brain structure have changed in human populations over the past 10,000 years. In some regions, natural selection has favored people with denser bones, greater heat tolerance, or altered metabolism. Cultural changes create new pressures and new directions for evolution to explore. We are not a finished product. We are part of a living process that continues to change, only more quietly than before. A turtle's shell is made from its ribs. A turtle's shell is not an external structure like armor, but is built from the animal's own skeleton. The broad, fused plates that form the shell are modified ribs and vertebrae that curve outward and then harden. This unique adaptation evolved gradually, with fossil evidence showing transitional forms that had partially expanded ribs but not a complete shell. The result is an animal whose body is shaped like its fortress. Evolution did not add anything new. It folded what was already there into a living shield. The turtle carries its skeleton on the outside like a fortress that grew from within. Feeding young with milk evolved before giving birth to live young. Milk is the defining trait of mammals, but it may have evolved before mammals began giving birth to live offspring. In the earliest mammalian ancestors, milk may have served not only as food, but also as a way to keep eggs moist and protect them from infection. Over time, it became richer in nutrients and eventually replaced the egg entirely. Even monotremes, mammals such as the platypus and echidna that still lay eggs, produce milk to feed their young. This evolutionary sequence shows how an adaptation can change functions, gradually taking on new roles. What began as moisture became nourishment and, over time, the defining trait of an entire class of life. The human chin has no clear function. Unlike most bones in the body, the human chin has no obvious mechanical or structural role. It does not help us chew or speak, and other primates function perfectly well without one. Yet every modern human has a chin. Some scientists believe it is a byproduct of the shrinking jaw during evolution, a remnant left behind as our faces became flatter and less robust. Others suggest that it may play a role in sexual selection or facial structure. Whatever its origin, the chin remains a small anatomical mystery, a reminder that not every feature is the result of deliberate design. Some are simply remnants that never disappeared. Goosebumps are a remnant of fur. When you feel cold or frightened, tiny muscles at the base of each hair follicle contract, causing the hairs on your skin to stand upright. In animals with thick fur, this reflex fluffs up the coat to provide insulation or makes the animal appear larger when facing danger. In humans, with our mostly hairless skin, the effect is nearly useless, a ghost signal from a past in which we no longer live. Goosebumps are an evolutionary relic, a physical echo of a time when our ancestors depended on fur to stay warm and fear raised their hair like armor. Ravens and crows evolved intelligence that rivals that of primates. Members of the corvid family, including ravens, crows, and jays, have developed exceptional cognitive abilities. They use tools, solve puzzles, recognize faces, and even plan for future needs. Their brains are structured differently from those of mammals, yet they display many of the same intelligent behaviors found in apes and dolphins. This is an example of convergent evolution at the level of cognition, where very different brain structures developed similar mental abilities. Intelligence, it turns out, is not tied to a single form or species. It can emerge wherever the pressures for problem-solving and memory are strong enough. Flightlessness evolved in birds around the world. The inability to fly has evolved many times in birds, including ostriches, emus, kiwis, rhees, and penguins. This often happens on islands or in environments free of predators, where the energy cost of flight outweighs its benefits. Once grounded, these birds often develop powerful legs for running or swimming instead. Their wings shrink, their breastbones flatten, and their bodies shift toward balance and speed. Flight, although extraordinary, is not always necessary, and in the right environment, evolution removes it, not as a loss, but as a shift in focus toward life on land or in the sea. The human brain tripled in size in only a few million years. Compared with other primates, the human brain is an evolutionary outlier, especially the neocortex, where reasoning, language, and imagination take place. In less than 3 million years, our ancestors went from having brains the size of a chimpanzee's to the massive, energy-hungry organ we carry today. This rapid expansion may have been driven by many forces, including tool use, social complexity, environmental challenges, and language. Whatever the cause, the result is a brain that consumes 20% of our resting energy and gives rise to art, technology, and science. Evolution does not always move slowly. Sometimes it moves at full speed. Wisdom teeth are a fading inheritance. Our ancestors had larger jaws and more teeth, including a complete third set of molars now known as wisdom teeth. These helped grind tough, raw foods long before cooking and agriculture. But as our diets changed and our faces became smaller, there was no longer enough room for those additional teeth. Today, many people have them removed or never develop them at all. In some populations, the genetic tendency to develop wisdom teeth is slowly disappearing. They are a reminder of a past filled with heavy chewing, one that modern jaws can no longer accommodate. Evolution continues, one dental appointment at a time. Antarctic icefish lost hemoglobin and learned to live without it. In nearly all vertebrates, hemoglobin is essential for carrying oxygen through the blood. However, icefish from the Channicthiidae family followed a completely different evolutionary path. Because they inhabit the extremely cold waters of Antarctica, where dissolved oxygen is abundant. A series of mutations caused them to lose the functional genes responsible for producing hemoglobin. Their blood is almost transparent and carries oxygen dissolved directly in the plasma. To compensate for this apparent disadvantage, they evolved much larger hearts, wider blood vessels, and an extremely efficient circulatory system. What might seem like a condition incompatible with life became a successful adaptation because of a highly unusual environment. Evolution sometimes does not improve an existing tool. Instead, it demonstrates that even the most fundamental functions can disappear when the environment provides an alternative. Parasitoid wasps incorporated entire viruses into their own biology. Millions of years ago, certain viruses infected the ancestors of several parasitoid wasp species. Instead of disappearing, some viral fragments became permanently integrated into the insect's DNA and began performing a new function. Today, these wasps produce virus-like particles that they inject along with their eggs into other insects. These particles do not cause disease. Instead, they temporarily suppress the host's immune system so the larvae can develop without being attacked. What was once an enemy became an indispensable reproductive tool. It is one of the most extraordinary examples of how evolution can repurpose ancient genetic invaders and turn them into permanent allies. The tallest trees on Earth evolved alongside an astonishingly delicate hydraulic system. Coast redwoods can grow more than 328 feet tall, but transporting water from their roots to their highest leaves presents an enormous physical challenge. Instead of using a central pump, they depend on millions of tiny tubes in which water rises through the cohesion between its molecules and the constant evaporation from the leaves. The entire system operates under tension, as though an immense column of water were being stretched without breaking. Over millions of years, evolution refined the structure of these conducting vessels to prevent air bubbles from forming and interrupting the flow. The tallest tree in the world does not overcome gravity through brute force, but by using the microscopic properties of water with extraordinary precision. Hummingbirds modified nearly their entire metabolism to sustain hovering flight. Remaining motionless in the air while beating their wings up to 80 times per second requires an enormous amount of energy. To make this possible, hummingbirds evolved proportionally enormous hearts, highly efficient lungs, and chest muscles that occupy a large portion of their bodies. They can also use the sugar from nectar only minutes after consuming it, converting it directly into fuel for flight. During the night, they drastically lower their body temperature and enter a state called torpor, reducing their energy consumption until the sun rises again. Evolution did not merely perfect their wings. It modified every organ in their bodies to sustain one of the most demanding lifestyles in the animal kingdom. Carnivorous plants evolved independently several times around the world. Although all of them capture insects to obtain nutrients, their traps emerged through completely different evolutionary paths. Some developed leaves that function like jaws, others formed containers filled with digestive fluid, and others produced sticky surfaces where prey becomes trapped. These solutions appeared repeatedly in plant lineages that were not closely related, always in response to soils that were extremely poor in nitrogen and phosphorus. Evolution found different ways to solve the same problem using ordinary plant structures. Instead of creating entirely new organs, it transformed regular leaves into sophisticated hunting tools. Fruit bats helped shape the evolution of countless tropical forests. Every night, they travel long distances, feeding on ripe fruit and dispersing thousands of seeds through their droppings. Over millions of years, many plants began to depend on these flying mammals to colonize new areas. Some species even evolved fruits with subtle colors but powerful aromas that are especially easy for bats to detect at night. At the same time, these animals developed digestive systems capable of processing the pulp quickly without damaging the seeds. It is an example of coevolution, in which two completely different groups changed together, shaping the tropical forests we know today. Starfish can completely reorganize their bodies after losing an arm. Many species possess an extraordinary regenerative ability that allows them to rebuild entire limbs, along with muscles, nervous tissue, internal organs, and calcified skeletal structures. In some species, a single arm separated from the body can regenerate into a complete individual as long as it retains part of the central disc. This process depends on cells that can temporarily return to a less specialized state before rebuilding complex tissues. Evolution favored this ability because many predators capture only one limb, allowing the rest of the animal to survive. What would be a fatal injury for other organisms is simply the beginning of a slow reconstruction for a starfish. Flamingos get their characteristic pink color through millions of years of dietary adaptation. The feathers of a newborn flamingo are gray. The pink color appears gradually as it consumes small crustaceans and algae rich in carotenoids. Evolution favored mechanisms capable of absorbing these pigments, transporting them through the blood, and selectively depositing them in the feathers, skin, and bill. A more intense color usually indicates good health and an abundant diet, so it also became a signal used during mate selection. The spectacular plumage does not come from a pigment produced by the bird itself, but from the highly specialized use of compounds found in its food. Evolution transformed nutrition into a visual language. Lichens represent an evolutionary alliance so close that for centuries they were believed to be a single organism. In reality, each lichen is the result of an association between a fungus and an alga, or a cyanobacterium. The fungus provides structure, protection, and moisture retention, while its partner performs photosynthesis and produces food. Some species have maintained this cooperation for millions of years, forming organisms capable of colonizing bare rock, deserts, mountains, and even polar regions. Evolution favored a relationship so integrated that both organisms function as an almost inseparable unit. What appears to be a simple patch on a rock is actually one of the most successful biological collaborations in the history of life. Leafcutter ants have practiced a form of agriculture for millions of years. Instead of feeding directly on the leaves they collect, they use them as a growing medium for a specific fungus on which they depend completely. The colonies carefully clean the garden, remove contaminants, fertilize the crop, and carry new fungal varieties when they establish another colony. In return, the fungus evolved to lose much of its ability to survive without them. The two organisms became so closely connected that neither could exist in the wild without the other. Long before human agriculture appeared, evolution had already developed societies capable of planting, tending, and harvesting their own food through extraordinarily specialized cooperation. Flowering plants transformed the planet by forming partnerships with insects. Before flowers appeared, most plants depended on the wind to carry their pollen. About 140 million years ago, some began developing colorful structures, scents, and nectar rewards that attracted specific insects. In exchange for food, these visitors carried pollen from one flower to another with far greater precision than the wind. Over time, plants and pollinators began influencing each other. More specialized flowers favored more efficient insects, while insects with better adaptations gained access to more food. This evolutionary race drove an enormous explosion of plant and animal diversity. Much of today's forests, grasslands, and crops exists because of an alliance that began millions of years ago between tiny insects and the first flowers. Aphids developed such a close relationship with certain bacteria that they can no longer live without them. Inside special cells called bacteriocytes, live microorganisms from the genus Buchnera passed from mothers to offspring for countless generations. These bacteria produce essential amino acids that aphids cannot obtain from plant sap, while the insects provide them with a stable environment and a constant supply of nutrients. Over millions of years, the bacteria lost much of their own DNA because they no longer needed genes whose functions were supplied by their host. Today, both organisms function as a single biological unit. Evolution does not always produce more independent individuals. Sometimes it creates associations so deep that the survival of one depends completely on the other. Elephants evolved additional mechanisms to reduce the risk of developing cancer. Although they have far more cells than humans and live for decades, they show surprisingly low rates of certain types of cancer. One reason is that they possess numerous functional copies of the TP53 gene, which detects DNA damage and triggers the destruction of potentially dangerous cells before they can form tumors. While most mammals have only one functional copy of this gene, elephants developed several throughout their evolutionary history. This adaptation probably appeared in response to the gradual increase in their body size. As evolution produced animals that were larger and longer-lived, it also had to strengthen the mechanisms that protected millions of additional cells. Archerfish learned to use the laws of optics to hunt outside the water. These tropical fish capture insects by firing precise jets of water that knock prey from leaves and branches above the surface. What makes this extraordinary is that they must compensate for the refraction of light because objects appear to be in a different position when viewed from underwater. Their brains automatically correct this optical effect before they fire. They also adjust the force of the water jet according to the distance, maximizing the probability of success. Evolution modified not only their muscles and mouths, but also their ability to interpret a visual world distorted by the physics of water. Mycorrhizal fungi helped the first plants conquer dry land. When the earliest plants began leaving aquatic environments hundreds of millions of years ago, soils were poor in nutrients and presented an enormous challenge. Many of them formed partnerships with fungi, capable of extending extremely fine filaments through the soil and absorbing water, phosphorus, and minerals far more efficiently than primitive roots. In return, the fungi received sugars produced through photosynthesis. This cooperation evolved into one of the most widespread biological relationships on the planet. Even today, most plant species continue to depend on these underground partners. The colonization of the continents by plants would probably have been much slower without this ancient evolutionary alliance. Cleaner fish and their clients developed a sophisticated system of mutual trust. On many tropical reefs, small species of fish and shrimp feed on parasites, dead tissue, and debris that accumulate on much larger animals. What is remarkable is that potential predators remain still while the tiny cleaners move even inside their mouths and gills without being attacked. Both participants benefit. The cleaners obtain food, while the larger animals reduce their parasite load. Over time, evolution favored visual signals and behaviors that allow these cleaning stations to be recognized. It is an extraordinary example of cooperation between species that would normally be connected only through the relationship between predator and prey. Migratory birds evolved biological compasses capable of detecting Earth's magnetic field. Many species travel thousands of miles each year across oceans, mountains, and continents with astonishing precision. To accomplish this, they use a combination of solar references, stars, landscapes, and a specialized sensory system that allows them to perceive the direction of Earth's magnetic field. Research indicates that light-sensitive proteins in the retina and tiny iron particles distributed throughout certain tissues may contribute to this ability. Evolution refined multiple navigation systems that work together to guide journeys with extraordinary accuracy. Thanks to them, birds that have never traveled a route before can still find the same place where they were born, generation after generation. Beavers changed their environment so profoundly that they helped drive their own evolution. By building dams and ponds, these mammals transform fast-moving rivers into calm wetlands where they gain protection from predators and constant access to food. Over time, natural selection favored individuals that were increasingly efficient at cutting down trees, transporting branches, and constructing stronger dams. At the same time, the changes created by previous generations formed new environments in which later generations grew and reproduced. This phenomenon, known as niche construction, shows that evolution does not always act on passive organisms. Sometimes species change the world around them and then evolve in response to the very modifications they created. Cave salamanders evolved to live with almost no pigmentation. In many caves around the world, species exist whose bodies are completely white or pink because of the gradual loss of melanin. Since permanent darkness makes coloration useless, evolution favored the reduction of this costly metabolic process while strengthening other senses, such as chemical and mechanical perception of the environment. Many also have reduced eyes or eyes covered by skin, along with remarkably long lifespans and extremely slow metabolisms. In an environment where seasons barely exist and light never reaches, evolution eliminated unnecessary features and perfected those that were truly useful for surviving in absolute darkness. Giant squid evolved the largest known eyes in the animal kingdom. Some reach diameters greater than 10 inches, approximately the size of a soccer ball. Very little sunlight reaches the deep ocean, so enormous eyes allow them to capture the faint light available and detect massive silhouettes approaching through the darkness. This adaptation is believed to be especially useful for sensing sperm whales, their main predators, as they disturb the water while moving. Building visual organs of such enormous size requires a tremendous investment of energy. But evolution favored this cost because detecting danger a few seconds earlier can mean the difference between escaping and becoming prey. Sea snakes transformed a tongue designed for smelling into a tool capable of tracking prey underwater. Their land-dwelling ancestors already used their tongues to collect tiny chemical particles from the air and carry them to the Jacobson's organ. When some lineages returned to the ocean, this system did not disappear. Instead, evolution adapted it to function in a completely different environment. Sea snakes can now detect chemical trails dissolved in the water, allowing them to locate fish hidden among reefs and crevices with remarkable precision. Although their bodies changed dramatically for swimming, they preserved an ancient sensory system inherited from terrestrial reptiles that still plays a fundamental role millions of years after they left the land. Zebras probably evolved their stripes to escape disease-carrying flies. For a long time, scientists believed that stripes mainly served as camouflage or confused predators. However, numerous studies show that they also significantly reduce landings by horseflies and other blood-feeding insects. These insects have difficulty judging speed and direction when approaching striped surfaces, so they often veer away before landing. In regions where these parasites are abundant, avoiding even a single bite can reduce the risk of potentially deadly infections. Evolution, therefore, favored a visual pattern that, besides appearing striking to us, acts as a defense against one of the most persistent enemies of Africa's large herbivores. Bacteria evolved an immune system that eventually became one of the most important tools in modern biotechnology. To defend themselves against invading viruses, many bacteria store small fragments of the invader's DNA in special regions of their own genomes. When the same virus attempts to infect them again, they use that information to recognize it and destroy its genetic material with specialized proteins. This mechanism, known as CRISPR, evolved long before humans existed. What began as a microscopic survival strategy eventually gave science an extraordinarily precise tool for editing genes. Evolution solved a bacterial problem that millions of years later would find completely unexpected applications. Coral reefs and microscopic algae evolved to share almost the same life. Inside the tissues of most corals live millions of tiny algae known as zooxanthellae. Through photosynthesis, they produce much of the nourishment the coral needs to build its enormous calcium carbonate skeleton. In return, the algae receive shelter, carbon dioxide, and mineral compounds essential for their growth. This partnership made it possible for some of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth to form. However, it also made corals extremely sensitive to environmental change. When water temperatures rise too much, the relationship can break down and the algae are expelled, causing coral bleaching. It demonstrates how evolution can produce extraordinarily successful alliances that are also delicately dependent. Geese flying in formation take advantage of aerodynamic principles refined over millions of years. When they fly in their characteristic V-shape, each bird carefully positions itself within the upward-moving air created by the wingtip of the bird ahead. This reduces air resistance and lowers the effort required to remain airborne during long migrations. The positions within the formation also change regularly, so that the work is shared among all members of the group. What appears to be a simple geometric pattern is actually a highly efficient energy-saving strategy shaped by natural selection. Thanks to this cooperation, many species travel thousands of miles while using considerably less energy than they would if flying alone. Cleaner fish even learn to recognize regular clients. Studies have shown that some species remember which fish frequently return to cleaning stations and change their behavior depending on the visitor. Individuals that provide better service receive more clients, while those that bite healthy tissue instead of limiting themselves to removing parasites are often avoided. This creates a form of selection based on reputation within the reef. Evolution favored both cooperation and the ability to remember past interactions, producing a system surprisingly similar to a business relationship in which both sides benefit as long as mutual trust is maintained. Seeds of many plants evolved to survive passage through the digestive systems of animals. Fleshy fruits did not appear only to feed herbivores. In reality, they are a strategy for getting those animals to carry seeds over long distances. Many seeds have extremely durable outer coverings that withstand the acidic conditions of the stomach and the movements of the intestines without being damaged. In fact, in some species, passage through the digestive tract improves germination by slightly weakening the outer shell. Evolution turned countless mammals and birds into efficient, involuntary seed dispersers. Every fruit that is eaten represents an opportunity for the next generation of plants to colonize new territory far from competition with their parents. Seals evolved an extraordinary ability to control oxygen flow during deep dives. Before submerging, they store large amounts of oxygen in their blood and muscles through high concentrations of hemoglobin and myoglobin. Once underwater, they dramatically reduce their heart rate and restrict circulation to less essential organs, concentrating the available supply in the brain and heart. This system allows them to remain underwater for long periods without needing to breathe. Evolution did not simply increase their lung capacity. It reorganized their entire cardiovascular physiology to manage the available oxygen with exceptional efficiency. Monarch butterflies evolved to turn plant poison into their greatest defense. During the caterpillar stage, they feed exclusively on milkweed, plants rich in toxic compounds known as cardiac glycosides. Instead of harming them, these compounds accumulate in the insect's tissues and remain even after metamorphosis. As a result, many birds quickly learn to avoid the brightly colored orange butterflies after an unpleasant experience. Evolution favored both physiological resistance to the poison and a striking coloration that warns predators of their toxicity. What began as an adaptation for feeding on a plant that few other animals could use eventually became a powerful survival strategy. The first mammals probably survived the extinction of the dinosaurs because of traits that had evolved long before the asteroid impact. They were small, mostly nocturnal animals capable of sheltering underground and feeding on a highly varied diet. These adaptations, originally developed for coexistence with large dinosaurs, became ideal when ecosystems collapsed about 66 million years ago. While numerous specialized species disappeared, those generalist mammals found opportunities in a transformed world. Evolution could not anticipate a planetary catastrophe, but traits that once seemed modest ultimately became the foundation of the extraordinary evolutionary success that, millions of years later, would give rise to the immense diversity of mammals that exists today. Butterfly fish helped drive a true evolutionary arms race on coral reefs. Many species feed almost exclusively on coral polyps, placing constant pressure on coral colonies. In response, numerous corals developed stronger skeletons, spines, defensive chemicals, and growth patterns that make it more difficult for these fish to reach them. In turn, some butterfly fish species evolved longer snouts, narrower jaws, and specialized teeth capable of reaching into tiny spaces between coral branches. Every improvement in one group favored new adaptations in the other. Over millions of years, predator and prey shaped each other's evolution, demonstrating how constant competition can drive an extraordinary diversity of biological forms and strategies. Chameleons evolved eyes capable of exploring two different directions at the same time. Each eye can rotate almost independently, allowing them to watch different parts of their surroundings simultaneously without moving their heads. While one eye scans for potential predators, the other can slowly track an insect. When the moment comes to strike, both eyes quickly converge on the same target to calculate the distance accurately before launching the tongue. This extraordinary coordination combines a wide field of vision with precise depth perception exactly when it is needed. Evolution did not sacrifice one ability to gain the other. Instead, it integrated both into a visual system that is unique among vertebrates. American chestnut trees nearly disappeared, but their story continues to shape the evolution of forests. At the beginning of the 20th century, an accidentally introduced fungus caused a devastating disease that killed billions of these trees across North America. However, some individuals possess genetic variants that give them greater natural resistance. Today, surviving populations continue to reproduce, and natural selection favors trees that are better able to withstand the infection. Human intervention also plays a role through conservation programs, but the process shows how new environmental pressures can rapidly change the genetic composition of a species. Evolution does not occur only in the distant past. It continues to unfold in modern forests as organisms face entirely new challenges. Birds of paradise pushed sexual selection to one of its most spectacular extremes. In the forests of New Guinea, numerous species evolved iridescent feathers, extraordinarily long tails, and elaborate courtship dances that can last several minutes. Some carefully clean the ground where they will perform, while others completely transform the shape of their bodies by spreading their plumage. Females closely observe these displays before choosing a mate. Over countless generations, small accumulated preferences favored increasingly elaborate ornaments. Evolution does not produce adaptations only for survival, but also for attracting a partner, even when those same traits require greater energy or make the animal more visible to predators. Crabs evolved toward the same body shape again and again. This phenomenon, known as carcinization, occurred independently in different crustacean lineages over millions of years. Several groups that originally had elongated bodies and prominent tails eventually developed broad shells, reduced abdomens folded beneath the body, and legs adapted for sideways movement. Although these groups did not descend from the same recent crab ancestor, they repeatedly arrived at remarkably similar anatomy. Scientists consider this one of the most striking examples of convergent evolution. For many coastal and marine lifestyles, the crab body plan appears to be an especially efficient solution that evolution has rediscovered on multiple occasions. Alpine plants evolved to grow close to the ground as a defense against extreme weather. On the highest mountains, powerful winds, low temperatures, and intense ultraviolet radiation make survival an enormous challenge. Many species developed a compact cushion-like growth form in which hundreds of small stems create a dense structure that preserves heat, reduces water loss, and protects flowers from the wind. Even the temperature inside these plants can be several degrees higher than the surrounding air during the day. Evolution did not make them grow taller to compete for light. Instead, it made them lower and more resilient, so they could endure one of the harshest environments on the planet. Sharks evolved an almost inexhaustible system of tooth replacement. Unlike mammals, whose permanent teeth appear only once, sharks continuously produce new teeth throughout their lives. Behind each functional row are several additional rows at different stages of development. When a tooth breaks or is lost during hunting, another quickly moves forward to take its place. Depending on the species, a single shark may replace tens of thousands of teeth over its lifetime. This adaptation evolved because their teeth experience enormous wear while catching slippery prey, breaking shells, or tearing into large animals. Evolution solved the problem not by producing indestructible teeth, but by ensuring an almost permanent supply. Mangrove trees evolved to raise their seedlings before releasing them into the water. In many mangrove species, the seed begins to germinate while it is still attached to the parent tree, a process known as viviparity. During this time, it develops a long shoot that stores reserves before detaching. When it finally falls, it may lodge directly in the mud if it reaches a suitable location, or float for days and even weeks until it arrives at another shoreline. This strategy greatly increases the chances of colonizing new coastal environments shaped by constant tides. Evolution transformed the earliest stage of these plants' lives to suit an environment where a conventional seed would have little chance of surviving. Praying mantises evolved stereoscopic vision remarkably similar to that of vertebrates. Despite having tiny brains, they use both eyes to calculate the distance to their prey accurately before striking. What is remarkable is that they achieved this ability through a form of visual processing different from that used by mammals and birds. Rather than copying the exact same biological solution, evolution found another way to solve the same problem: measuring depth accurately enough to capture insects in a fraction of a second. This discovery shows that apparently complex cognitive abilities can emerge from completely different nervous system architectures when evolutionary pressures favor similar outcomes. First seeds revolutionized the evolution of land plants. Before seeds appeared, reproduction depended largely on moist environments where reproductive cells could move through water. The evolution of the seed completely changed this situation. By enclosing the embryo in a protective covering along with stored food, plants gained the ability to withstand drought, low temperatures, and long periods of inactivity before germinating. This made it easier to colonize increasingly dry regions and allowed forests to spread across much of the continents. What appears to be a simple plant package represents one of the most important evolutionary innovations in the history of terrestrial life because it permanently changed the way plants conquered the planet. Salmon evolved an extraordinary navigation system that allows them to return to the exact river where they were born. After spending several years growing in the ocean, they begin one of the most remarkable journeys in the animal kingdom. To find their way, they use a combination of a magnetic compass, the position of the sun, and chemical memory. During their juvenile stage, they memorize the unique combination of minerals and scents found in the water of their home river. When the time comes to reproduce, they recognize that chemical signature even after traveling thousands of miles across the open ocean. Evolution refined this system over millions of years because returning to a place where a previous generation survived greatly increases the chances of reproductive success. Each migration is a journey guided by the memory of an invisible landscape. Net-casting spiders replaced speed with patience. Unlike spiders that build large, permanent webs, these species create a small, elastic net that they hold between their front legs while remaining completely still. When prey passes nearby, they expand the net explosively and throw it over the insect in only a fraction of a second. Their enormous eyes, especially adapted for night vision, allow them to calculate the exact moment to strike with great precision. Evolution did not favor the construction of enormous traps, but a portable strategy that combines camouflage, excellent vision, and extremely rapid movements. It demonstrates that even within the same group of animals, radically different solutions can emerge to solve the same problem. Trees of the genus Ficus and fig wasps maintain one of the most specialized evolutionary relationships known. Each fig tree species usually depends on one or only a few wasp species to complete its pollination. The tiny females enter through a narrow opening in the fruit to lay their eggs, carrying pollen from another tree as they do so. Once inside, many can no longer leave because they lose their wings during the process. While the larvae develop, the tree produces new flowers, and eventually a new generation of wasps emerges carrying pollen to another fig tree. For tens of millions of years, both evolutionary lineages changed at almost the same pace. The disappearance of one would immediately endanger the other, reflecting one of the most extreme examples of coevolution. Leopard seals evolved one of the most versatile feeding systems among marine mammals. Their front teeth are sharp for capturing penguins and fish, while their back teeth have specialized edges that work like a filter when they feed on small crustaceans such as krill. This allows them to change strategies according to food availability without needing to alter their behavior dramatically. Evolution favored a set of teeth capable of performing very different functions in an environment where conditions can vary enormously from one season to another. Thanks to this flexibility, leopard seals occupy one of the highest levels in the food chain of the Southern Ocean. Nectar-feeding bats evolved tongues that work like living brushes. In many species, the tip of the tongue is covered with tiny papillae that remain folded while inside the mouth. When the animal inserts its tongue into a flower, these structures rapidly unfold and greatly increase the surface area in contact with the nectar. As the tongue is withdrawn, the papillae close again and carry a larger amount of liquid into the mouth. This adaptation allows the bats to feed from deep flowers that other animals cannot use. At the same time, numerous plants evolved tubular flowers perfectly matched to the length of these tongues. Evolution turned feeding and pollination into an extraordinarily precise process. Dung beetles learned to navigate using the Milky Way. After forming a ball of dung, many species must quickly move away from competitors. To do this, they briefly climb onto the ball and observe the sky before pushing it in a straight line. Experiments conducted under different conditions showed that some species use the glowing pattern of the Milky Way as a reference when the moon is not visible. This ability makes these small insects the first known animals capable of navigating by using the galaxy. Evolution refined a surprisingly sophisticated navigation system to solve a very simple problem: escaping as quickly as possible from other competitors that might try to steal their food. These sponges preserve some of the oldest genetic tools in the animal kingdom. Although they lack brains, muscles, and true organs, they possess numerous genes related to cell communication, adhesion between cells, and embryonic development that are also found in much more complex animals. This indicates that many of the genetic foundations needed to build sophisticated organisms already existed before specialized tissues appeared. Evolution did not create these mechanisms from scratch in vertebrates or insects. Instead, it reused extremely ancient tools inherited from very simple common ancestors. Modern sponges provide an exceptional window into the earliest stages of animal evolution. Peregrine falcons perfected a body design built almost entirely for speed. Their long, pointed wings reduce air resistance, while their nostrils contain small, bony structures that regulate airflow during the fastest dives. They also have a transparent membrane that protects their eyes and neck muscles, capable of keeping the head stable while the body moves through the air at extraordinary speeds. Thanks to this combination of adaptations, they can exceed 186 miles per hour during a hunting dive. Evolution did not produce this speed through a single spectacular change, but by accumulating countless small aerodynamic improvements over millions of years. Soil bacteria and the roots of legumes developed an alliance that transformed the fertility of many ecosystems. Microorganisms from the genus Rhizobium enter the roots of plants such as beans, lentils, and clover, forming small nodules where they convert atmospheric nitrogen into compounds the plant can use for growth. In return, they receive sugars and a protected environment. This cooperation allowed numerous plants to thrive in nutrient-poor soils where other species would struggle to survive. Evolution did not only modify individual organisms, it created partnerships capable of enriching the soil and indirectly benefiting entire communities of plants and animals. Beaver ants build their nests by using their own larvae as living tools. When workers want to join two leaves, they form chains with their bodies to pull them together. They then carefully pick up the larvae and use them like tiny glue guns. When handled, the larvae release silk that the ants use to stitch the edges of the leaves together, forming strong chambers suspended among the branches. None of the larvae are harmed, and they later continue developing normally. Evolution coordinated the behavior of adults and larvae until the entire colony became a true construction unit, where different stages of the life cycle cooperate to build one of the most sophisticated nests in the insect world. Pufferfish evolved one of the ocean's most unusual defenses by combining an expandable body with a powerful toxin. When they detect a threat, they rapidly take in large amounts of water or air when outside the water, increasing their size several times within only a few seconds. This change makes it extremely difficult for predators to swallow them. Many species reinforce this strategy by accumulating tetrodotoxin in different tissues, an extremely toxic substance produced with the help of bacteria associated with their bodies. Evolution did not depend on a single defense, but on a combination of several strategies working together. A predator that manages to overcome the increase in size must still face the risk of potentially fatal poisoning. Bamboo evolved one of the most extraordinary reproductive cycles in the plant kingdom. Some species flower only once every several decades, and there are even cases in which an entire population waits more than 100 years before producing flowers and seeds at the same time. After completing this enormous reproductive effort, most of the plants die. Although this behavior may appear harmful to each individual, it benefits the population as a whole. The massive production of seeds at the same time overwhelms predators, which are unable to consume all of them, allowing large numbers to survive and form the next generation. Evolution favored a strategy based on extreme synchronization, in which millions of plants behave as though they are responding to the same biological clock. Poison frogs evolved bright colors to advertise a real danger. In many animals, camouflage is the best way to avoid predators. Poison dart frogs, however, followed the opposite path. Their intense yellow, blue, red, or orange colors act as a visual warning that communicates their toxicity before an attack occurs. This phenomenon, known as aposematic coloration, reduces the likelihood that predators will try again after an unpleasant experience. Some species even obtain part of their toxins from small arthropods they consume in the wild. Evolution transformed a conspicuous body, which would normally be a disadvantage, into an effective protective system based on the honesty of the signal. Marine mammals regained the ability to sleep without stopping their breathing. When the ancestors of whales and dolphins returned to the ocean, they faced a problem that fish never had. They needed to rise periodically to the surface to breathe air. Evolution solved this challenge through a type of rest known as unhemispheric sleep. While one cerebral hemisphere sleeps, the other remains active enough to control breathing, monitor the surroundings, and maintain movement. The two hemispheres later exchange roles. Thanks to this adaptation, these animals can rest without completely losing control of their bodies. Sleep stopped being a state of total disconnection and became an activity carefully divided between the two halves of the brain. Scorpions have changed very little over hundreds of millions of years because their design proved extraordinarily efficient. The earliest members of this group appeared long before the dinosaurs and survived numerous mass extinctions. Their success is not due to an absence of evolution, but to the fact that many of their main features proved highly effective in different environments. Strong pincers, a venomous stinger, a durable exoskeleton, and a physiology capable of enduring long periods without food allowed them to adapt to deserts, forests, and mountainous regions. Evolution does not always produce spectacular changes. When a combination of traits works extremely well, natural selection can preserve it for enormous periods of time while making only small adjustments. Night-blooming flowers evolved to communicate with completely different pollinators. While many daytime flowers use intense colors to attract bees and butterflies, those that open at night usually have white or very pale petals, powerful scents, and abundant nectar. These traits are especially effective at attracting moths, bats, and other nocturnal visitors that depend more on smell than on sight. At the same time, many of these pollinators developed senses capable of detecting those fragrances accurately over long distances. Evolution adjusted the signals produced by plants and the sensory abilities of animals until highly specialized relationships formed that come to life only after darkness falls. Crocodiles retained a surprisingly advanced heart for a reptile. Unlike most living reptiles, they possess a heart divided into 4 chambers, a feature also found in birds and mammals. They also have a special system of valves and vascular connections that allows them to change the path of their blood when they remain underwater for long periods. This ability improves oxygen use during dives and optimizes the functioning of their bodies under different conditions. Evolution combined a highly efficient cardiovascular design with the flexibility needed to alternate between aquatic and terrestrial life without losing performance. Thick insects perfected the art of disguise to extraordinary levels. Many species not only have elongated bodies that resemble branches, but also slowly sway while walking to imitate the natural movement of a twig in the wind. Others display small markings that resemble lichens, scars, or plant buds. Even the eggs of some species look remarkably like seeds, reducing the chances of being detected by predators. Evolution acted on many details at the same time, from shape and color to behavior. The result is camouflage so convincing that these insects can remain motionless for hours without being discovered. Sperm whales developed one of the most complex acoustic communication systems in the ocean. They produce sequences of clicks known as codas that vary among different family groups. These combinations appear to function as a kind of cultural identity, since individuals belonging to the same group use similar patterns that they learn from an early age. Research suggests that different populations maintain their own acoustic traditions, passed down from one generation to the next. Evolution provided the biological abilities needed to produce and hear these sounds, while social learning allowed cultural variations to emerge within the same species. It is a reminder that evolution and culture can interact even in animals very different from humans. Bacteria from hot springs evolved proteins capable of functioning at temperatures that would destroy those of most organisms. In environments where water temperatures rise well above 158 degrees Fahrenheit, ordinary proteins would quickly lose their structure and stop working. Thermophilic microorganisms, however, developed much more stable molecules through small modifications accumulated over millions of years. These adaptations allow them to carry out biological processes under extreme conditions that would be lethal to almost all forms of life. Interestingly, some of these proteins have found applications in scientific research and biotechnology because of their extraordinary resistance to heat. Evolution turned a seemingly uninhabitable environment into the home of highly specialized organisms. Reef squid can change the color of their entire bodies in less than a second, thanks to millions of specialized cells called chromatophores. Each of these tiny pigment sacs is controlled directly by the nervous system. When certain muscles contract, the pigment expands and instantly changes the animal's appearance. Beneath this layer are also reflective cells that produce metallic and iridescent effects, allowing extremely complex patterns to appear. Evolution perfected this system not only for camouflage, but also for communicating with other individuals, intimidating rivals, and confusing predators. What appears to be a simple color change is actually the result of sophisticated coordination between skin, muscles, and brain developed over millions of years. Grasses evolved to withstand continuous grazing by large herbivores. Unlike most plants, whose growth points are located at the tips of their stems, grasses keep them very close to the ground. This allows them to grow back quickly, even after being almost completely eaten. Many also incorporated tiny silica crystals into their leaves, increasing their hardness and accelerating the wear of the teeth of animals that feed on them. Evolution did not seek to prevent them from being eaten entirely, but to allow them to survive and recover again and again. This strategy contributed to the expansion of enormous grasslands that now cover vast regions of the planet. Hammerhead sharks developed an extraordinary head shape that improves several senses at the same time. The lateral expansion of the skull places the eyes far apart, providing better depth perception during hunting. It also distributes the electroreceptive organs over a much larger surface area, increasing the ability to detect the weak electrical signals produced by fish hidden beneath the sand. In addition, this structure improves maneuverability during rapid turns. What initially appears to be an extravagant shape is actually a combination of several advantages gradually selected by evolution, with a single anatomical modification benefiting multiple essential functions at the same time. Transparent butterflies evolved nearly invisible wings through microscopic modifications to their surfaces. In species such as glasswing butterflies, the typical scales covering the wings became greatly reduced or disappeared in certain areas. The remaining surface contains tiny nanoscale structures that reduce the reflection of light and make the material much less visible to predators. Instead of hiding through colors that imitate the surroundings, these butterflies almost eliminate part of their own appearance. Evolution found a different solution from traditional camouflage by using optical principles that only began to be fully understood with the development of modern microscopy. Elephant seals transformed their bodies to withstand dives, lasting more than an hour while searching for food. They possess enormous oxygen reserves stored in their blood and muscles, along with a remarkable ability to slow their heart rate during diving. While underwater, they restrict blood flow to less essential tissues and concentrate the available oxygen in the most important organs. They also tolerate high concentrations of carbon dioxide that would be uncomfortable for most mammals. Evolution adjusted the respiratory, circulatory, and metabolic systems at the same time, allowing these marine giants to explore depths where few predators can follow them. Desert ants evolved to navigate using the position of the sun and polarized light from the sky. After leaving the nest in search of food, they travel along complex paths across extremely hot surfaces where almost no visual landmarks exist. To return directly to the nest, they combine information about the direction of the sun with polarization patterns invisible to the human eye. They also maintain an approximate record of the distance traveled through a mechanism known as path integration. Evolution refined this system because remaining too long under the intense desert heat can be fatal. Thanks to this ability, they find their way home with remarkable accuracy even across landscapes that appear completely identical. Orchids evolved some of the most elaborate reproductive strategies in the plant kingdom. While many plants simply offer nectar as a reward, certain orchids produce flowers that imitate in extraordinary detail the appearance, scent, and even texture of the females of particular insects. The males attempt to mate with the flower because they mistake it for a partner, and during the process, they carry pollen to another plant. This strategy, known as pseudocopulation, arose through countless small modifications accumulated over millions of years. Evolution refined biological deception to such an extraordinary level that the reproduction of the plant depends entirely on the perception of the insect. Lungfish retained a trait inherited from ancient vertebrates that allows them to breathe atmospheric air. Although they live in freshwater, they possess functional lungs in addition to gills. During droughts, some African species bury themselves in mud and form a protective cocoon where they remain for months, breathing air while waiting for the rains to return. This ability provides valuable evidence of the adaptations that helped certain vertebrates transition to life on land hundreds of millions of years ago. Evolution preserved this ancient mechanism because it continued to provide advantages in environments where water periodically disappears. Fireflies transformed ancestral chemical signals into a complex language of light. The light they produce through an extremely efficient biochemical reaction is used mainly to attract mates, but each species has specific flashing patterns that allow compatible individuals to recognize one another. In some regions, enormous groups synchronize their flashes in a spectacular display, illuminating entire forests during brief periods of the year. Evolution favored increasingly precise light codes to prevent reproductive mistakes and make it easier for members of the same species to find one another. What appears to us as a beautiful nighttime spectacle is actually a visual conversation carefully refined by natural selection. Microorganisms living around underwater volcanoes demonstrated that evolution can thrive even without sunlight. In the deep ocean, hydrothermal vents release extremely hot water rich in chemical compounds. Bacteria and archaea live there and obtain energy through chemosynthesis, using substances such as hydrogen sulfide instead of depending on photosynthesis. Entire ecosystems made up of tube worms, mollusks, crustaceans, and numerous specialized organisms develop on this foundation. Evolution built complete communities around energy sources entirely different from sunlight, expanding our understanding of the conditions under which life can arise and survive. Emperor penguins evolved a reproductive strategy capable of enduring one of the most extreme environments on the planet. During the Antarctic winter, when temperatures can fall far below -58 degrees Fahrenheit and winds reach extraordinary speeds, the male keeps the single egg on his feet, covered by a fold of skin known as the brood pouch. For approximately 2 months, he goes without food while protecting the embryo from the ice. To reduce heat loss, thousands of individuals form enormous groups in which they constantly change positions, allowing every bird to spend time in the warmer areas of the group. Evolution modified not only the physiology of these birds, but also a cooperative behavior that greatly increases the survival of the entire colony. Bombardier beetles evolved one of the most sophisticated chemical defense systems in the animal kingdom. At the end of the abdomen, they possess separate chambers where they store different chemical compounds without allowing them to react. When attacked, they rapidly mix these substances inside a specialized chamber containing enzymes that trigger an extremely energetic reaction. The result is the release of a hot spray containing irritating compounds aimed at the predator with remarkable precision. The inner walls of the chamber are adapted to withstand repeated explosions without being damaged. Evolution gradually perfected this mechanism through small modifications accumulated over millions of years, transforming a simple chemical system into an extraordinarily effective defense. Baleen whales transformed ancient teeth into enormous feeding filters. The ancestors of these cetaceans possessed functional teeth, but over time, some lineages began capturing enormous quantities of small organisms instead of individual large prey. As a result, the teeth disappeared and were replaced by long, flexible plates of keratin known as baleen. By opening their mouths, they engulf thousands of gallons of water filled with krill or small fish. They then force the water back out with their tongues while the baleen traps the food. Evolution did not create a completely new structure, but modified existing tissues until they became an extremely efficient filtration system capable of feeding some of the largest animals that have ever existed. Cacti evolved spines that perform many more functions than simple defense. Although they protect the plant from numerous herbivores, they also help reduce wind speed across the surface, decreasing water loss through evaporation. In some species, they create small areas of shade that reduce excessive heating of the stem during the hottest hours of the day. On certain nights, they may also encourage the condensation of tiny water droplets from fog. Evolution transformed ancestral leaves into multifunctional structures capable of confronting several challenges of the planet's driest deserts at the same time. Aquatic insects that walk on water took advantage of a physical property through microscopic adaptations. Water striders have legs covered with thousands of tiny water-repellent hairs that prevent them from breaking the surface tension. This allows them to distribute their weight so efficiently that they can move rapidly across the surface without sinking. They even use perfectly coordinated movements to propel themselves by taking advantage of the elasticity of the water's surface. Evolution did not change the properties of the liquid, but adapted the insect's anatomy to benefit from a physical phenomenon that has always existed in nature. Giraffes evolved a circulatory system capable of withstanding exceptionally high blood pressure. pumping blood to a brain located several feet above the heart requires much greater pressure than that of most mammals. To accomplish this, they evolved an especially powerful heart with thick muscular walls and reinforced arteries capable of withstanding that pressure without being damaged. In addition, when they lower their heads to drink, a complex network of blood vessels helps prevent an excessive amount of blood from reaching the brain. Evolution did not solve only the problem of reaching the highest leaves, but also every physiological challenge created by having the longest neck among terrestrial animals. Deep-sea fish evolved proteins capable of functioning under enormous pressure. Several thousand feet below the surface, water pressure is hundreds of times greater than it is at sea level. Under those conditions, many proteins would lose their structure and stop functioning properly. However, numerous deep-sea species accumulated small modifications in their molecules and in the chemical composition of their cells that stabilize the function of their enzymes and membranes. These adaptations allow essential processes such as cellular respiration and muscle contraction to continue normally in an environment that would be lethal to most vertebrates. Evolution refined the biochemistry of these animals until life under extraordinary pressure became possible. Beavers do more than build dams. They create new ecosystems in which other species evolve. By damming small rivers, they form ponds, wetlands, and flooded forests that completely transform the landscape. These environments provide shelter and food for amphibians, fish, insects, birds, and numerous mammals. Over time, some populations began adapting specifically to these new habitats created by the beavers themselves. The evolution of one species ultimately changed the selective pressures acting on many others. It is an example of how certain organisms can profoundly influence the evolutionary path of entire communities simply by transforming the environment in which they live. Jumping spiders evolved vision comparable to that of many vertebrate predators. Their large front-facing eyes provide exceptional resolution for an arthropod and allow them to calculate the distance to their prey accurately before leaping onto it. They also possess several additional pairs of eyes that monitor almost the entire environment for threats. Some species can even distinguish a wide range of colors and use complex visual signals during courtship. Evolution invested a large portion of these small predators' resources in an extraordinarily sophisticated visual and nervous system, compensating for the absence of permanent capture webs. Oyster reefs demonstrate that evolution can also favor organisms capable of improving the environment in which they live. Each oyster continuously removes suspended particles from the water to feed, helping increase the clarity of its surroundings. Over time, millions of individuals form reefs that soften the impact of waves, reduce coastal erosion, and provide shelter for countless marine species. Natural selection favored the ability to grow on top of one another, forming increasingly extensive structures. As a result, these organisms not only help ensure their own survival, but also create complete habitats where hundreds of different species can thrive. The evolution of a simple mollusk ultimately had a profound influence on the biodiversity of numerous coastal ecosystems.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.